Dracula and a girl walks home alone at night. Fred Botting's introduction to negative aesthetics provides the basis for which the genre Gothic horror can be compared and analysed. He breaks his arguments into 4 dimensions, being darkness, negativity, transformations, and criticism. This presentation will summarise Botting's 4 elements and then apply 3 of the elements to Bram Stoker's Dracula and Anna Lily Amirpour's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night to demonstrate the relevance of Botting's work. His first section, Darkness, can be summarised using one of his quotes, being darkness is, and I quote, an absence of the light associated with sense, security, and knowledge. Botting conveys the importance of history and the Enlightenment in truly establishing Gothic horror as a genre. The Enlightenment movement values science and reason over religion and superstitions. Gothic horror was used as a cautionary tale where the natural order was disrupted, and it demonstrated what a lack of knowledge, sense, and security would create. It was a way of visually defining the Dark Ages to prevent disruption to the New World Order's value of reason. Negativity for Botting is a process of, and I quote, transgression, excess, and monstrosity. Transgression relates to the disregard and deliberate crossing of boundaries and taboos to highlight the arbitrary concepts of societal norms. In this transgression framework, monstrosity plays a key role in manifesting negative attributes as physical creatures. Finally, excess refers to the ways in which order is disturbed and laws are broken. Excess, transgression, and monstrosity work together to create negativity and visual aesthetic for the unreasonable. Continuing to Botting's third element, transformation. Transformation discusses how the Gothic text has appeared and changed over time in relation to modernisation. For example, in the early ages of Gothic text, instability and anxieties of female sexuality was prevalent. However, in our modernised world, this is beginning to shift, as will be demonstrated later in this presentation. Modernisation and postmodern methods of storytelling, such as television and the use of technology, means that the Gothic genre must be adapted for modern audiences. Consider vampires. Once they're an icon of corruption and alterity, however now their attributes are attractive and idealised in some circumstances of modern Gothic horror. Botting concludes his writing with a turn to the future. This section questions where Gothic texts lie in a modern world. Are they simply a canon, or do they represent some kind of new value, moral, or norm? He states that texts are subject to reinterpretation under changing conditions. As the alterity changes, so too does the Gothic genre. Gothic horror at heart is a reflection of the fears and insecurity of the environment in which it is written. As such, to remain a relevant genre, Gothic horror must adapt to the ever-changing climate of its society. This is where criticism becomes apparent, because there is always contradiction between colonial and post-colonial interpretations of text. Botting's 4 elements attempt to define conventions for the Gothic horror genre. The first 3 elements are the most relevant to Stoker and Amirpour's work, and as such, only these will be discussed. Within both texts, darkness is present in physical markers. Firstly, in accordance with Botting's writing, setting demonstrates darkness. In Stoker's novel, the physical locations of the castle, the mansion, and landscape surrounding the castle all provide the reader with a feeling of insecurity. Similarly, in Amirpour's film, The Bad City, as it is referred to, has streets and alleyways that conjure unsettling emotions. In both pieces, when considering the setting, decay and desertion are prolific within their physical locations. Frequently, in Amirpour's film, we see the girl walking alone along abandoned streets. Another element within the darkness convention is the presence of 2 central figures. Dracula does not really adhere to this convention, being that a group of men are hunting him down. However, Count Dracula's relationship with both Mina and Lucy seem to mimic this older male villain and young female relationship. It is both Mina and Lucy's vulnerability that lead to their fates. Female powerlessness is evident and monopolized by Dracula, as such displaying the insecurities of the time and adhering to the older male villain convention in Botting's piece. On the other hand, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night does have a young female heroine and older male villain, or villains in this case. The girl fulfills the heroine role, killing a number of older men. Finally, Botting discusses the use of partial visibility as an attribute of darkness. Just one example of partial visibility in Dracula is fog. Fog is used to disclose places, alluding to insecurity and fear within Stoker's writing. For example, this occurs on page 294, where the fog enters Mina's room through the, and I quote, joining of the door. It makes the gaslight barely visible and creates fear of the unknown. However, fog was also used to describe Dracula. Abraham Van Helsing states he can appear as mist, as vapor, as fog, and vanish at will. Dracula's ability to be partially visible to the other characters manifests insecurity and senselessness, as such resulting in fear by the reader. Similarly, Amirpour also uses partial visibility to convey insecurity. The girl in the film wears a chador, as such she is only partially seen by her victims. The chador acts similar to a veil, making the girl more mysterious and frightening. Both Stoker and Amirpour's Gothic texts adhere to the conventions of darkness as discussed by Botting. Therefore, Botting's text in this case is certainly relevant to these Gothic pieces. Negativity is another relevant aspect of Botting's writing. In terms of negativity, transgression will be discussed. Firstly, Dracula will be discussed, then followed by A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Dracula interrogates many of Victorian society's anxieties of homosexuality, female sexuality, and reverse colonization. Firstly, the Count Dracula represents the homosexual figure as he attempted to seduce a man. The Victorian era view of homosexuality was very much that it was obscene and monstrous. As such, Dracula was a way of visually displaying the anxieties of homosexuality. Female sexuality was yet another anxiety conveyed where women would become sexually liberated and no longer at the mercy of men. Lucy and Mina both epitomize the fear of female sexuality through their hypersexualized personalities after becoming a vampire. Their altered sexual states only occur after being turned by the Count. Therefore, female sexuality is again displayed as monstrous and plays on visually showing society's insecurities. Another transgression that occurs within Dracula is reverse colonization. The fear that Dracula's primitive forces would colonize England. This was a legitimate fear within England at the time of Stoker's writing. The English feared the East would invade and colonize them, destabilizing their hierarchies and power structures. These three transgressions all displayed Victorian-era anxieties. They allowed a visual representation of monstrosity, resulting in their negative connotations and thus negativity. In contrary, Amirpour's film deals with three transgressors, being homosexuality, female liberation, and race. In today's society, homosexuality still faces negativity. Amirpour's film epitomizes this negativity in her main character, the girl, who engages in homosexual activities. Female liberation and race is a controversial topic. Thus, by having the monster be the liberated female, it conforms to Botting's element of negativity. Though the girl is not entirely negative, as she parodies older perceptions of vampires to confront postmodern society. Amirpour's work is best illustrated when discussing transformation. Finally, transformation is also relevant to the two pieces. Stoker's work is arguably very colonial, where Amirpour's is post-colonial and postmodern. Thus far in this presentation, we have seen that Dracula has extremely Victorian-era views. The transgressor, in this case Count Dracula, is extremely negative. In contrast, though, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night has made the transgressor, the girl, attractive, as she is an empowered female vigilante that provides justice for those positions as the other. Amirpour has reimagined women's social position, allowing the monster to, and I quote, interrogate the legitimacy of condemnation, prejudice, and exclusion. The vampire parody in the case of Amirpour's work comments on the unequal treatment of women, sexuality, and race. This is very much a postmodern text. Thus, the vampire has had to adapt and transform to remain relevant in a modern context. Transformation is extremely relevant when discussing these texts. In summary, Fred Botting's piece, Negative Aesthetics, provides 4 key elements for analysing Gothic horror, these being darkness, negativity, transformation, and criticism. Botting's writing was undeniably relevant to Bram Stoker's Dracula and Anna Lily Amirpour's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, as it allowed the text to be deconstructed against 3 of the elements. These elements are undeniably evident in each of the texts and as such make Botting's work relevant. Thank you for listening.